1. Khairi Sodelar left 3 men dead when he launched a swift, ruthless knife attack on innocent people in a reading park. The terrorist was handed a whole life sentence in January after pleading guilty to 3 murders and 3 attempted murders. Sodelar, now 27, shouted Allahu Akbar as he attacked friends James Furlong, 36, Dr. David Wales, 49, and Joseph Ritchie Bennett, 39, killing all 3 men, who were relaxing in Forbury Gardens on the evening of June 20 in 2020. The Old Bailey heard how his victims were killed with a single thrust of the knife, during an attack that lasted less than a minute. Following the deadly rampage, which saw 3 others injured, Sodelar threw away his 8-inch blade and ran as an off-duty police officer tried to catch him. As he was detained, a Muslim member of the public told him, "You have nothing to do with Islam, bastard." Prosecutor Alison Morgan QC said Sodelar wanted to kill as many people as possible in the name of violent jihad. The defendant was aiming to inflict the maximum amount of damage in the shortest possible time to allow him to kill as many people as possible, she told a court hearing, adding that the murders were highly effective executions. Sodelar, a failed Libyan asylum seeker, was also sentenced to concurrent 24-year jail terms for the attempted murders of Stephen Young, Patrick Edwards, and Nishit Nisudan. In October, he lost a Court of Appeal challenge against his whole life sentence following a hearing at the Royal Courts of Justice. 2. Kairos Robinson, Bailey Wilson, Bottom, Ethan Scott, Alistair Dixon. 5 teenagers were convicted of robbing 2 children of their dad following a mob attack over ant and deck banter. Alistair Dixon is facing a life sentence for murdering Danny Humble, while 4 others will be jailed for manslaughter after jurors at Newcastle Crown Court cleared them of murder. A 5th is 17 and cannot be identified at the moment. Danny was killed near an underpass in Cramlington, Northumberland, as he walked home with partner, Adele Stubbs, following their first trip out after lockdown restrictions lifted. What started as good-hearted banter about his resemblance to Ant McPartlin somehow turned nasty and ended up in him being punched, kicked and stamped to death. Soldier Dixon, 18, of Hawkins Way, Blythe, was found guilty of murder, while Ethan Scott, 18, of Chester Grove, Blythe, Kairos Robinson, 18, of Woodside Avenue, Seaton Delaval, Bailey Wilson, 18, of Mitford Avenue, Blythe, and a 17-year-old were cleared of murder but convicted of manslaughter after a trial at Newcastle Crown Court. They were all remanded in custody until their sentencing hearing. 3. Jonathan Sinfield. A babysitter who admitted shaking a 43-day-old baby, leaving the tot brain damaged, was jailed. Teacher Jonathan Sinfield was caring for the baby when the incident occurred in Bath, Bristol Crown Court heard. Initially he reported that the child became ill and knocked its head against a sofa. He later went on to claim he had dropped the tot from around a meter. Due to the baby's injuries, though, medical experts diagnosed the baby had been gripped forcefully and shaken. Ultimately Sinfield, 30, whose address was given as Cradley in Hertfordshire, pleaded guilty to causing grievous bodily harm and assault occasioning actual bodily harm. The court heard his career as a teacher is finished. Judge William Hart jailed him for 3 years, giving Sinfield a 25% discount on the 5-year maximum jail term for guilty pleas. 4. Francesca Horn. A woman who spat at police, threw objects at them and hit them with a wooden stick at a Bristol Kill the Bill protest was jailed. Francesca Horn, 25, of Picton Street, Montpelier, Bristol, admitted a charge of violent disorder during the Kill the Bill protests, but denied riot. However, she was found guilty of the offence following a trial at Bristol Crown Court in April. She appeared for sentence at the court on June 24, 2022. Judge James Patrick, presiding judge in the riot cases, jailed a tearful Horn for 5 years and 10 months. He told her, "You were an active and persistent participant. You were acting with other people and you accepted you changed your clothing in an attempt to disguise yourself." 5. Joanna Gomulska and Maros Tankos have been jailed after being found guilty of multiple modern slavery and human trafficking offences. A couple convicted of running a human trafficking network in Bristol, promising people a new life in the UK then forcing them to work without pay, have been jailed. The National Crime Agency rescued 5 men who were being kept as modern slaves in a house in Brentry Lane, Bristol, by Maros Tankos, 46, and Joanna Gomulska, 46. Tankos recruited vulnerable people from Slovakia, targeting those who were often raised in orphanages or living in camps. He promised them transport to the UK, somewhere to live and food. He said they could keep half of their wages each month, whilst the other half would be kept for rent and board. In reality, victims received no money. Earnings were spent by the defendants on online gambling, in casinos, on buying cars or their own living costs. Tankos and Gomulska were both convicted of multiple charges of conspiracy to traffic people into the UK. They were also convicted of conspiracy to acquire criminal property. Judge Martin Picton jailed Tankos for 16 years. He jailed Gomulska for 9 years. 6. Kenneth Solomon Angwa, who has been jailed for attempted murder of a man in Finsbury Park. This knifeman tried to stab to death a father of 3 in Finsbury Park who he wrongly believed was a police officer. During sentencing, the Old Bailey heard Solomon Angwa was out on bail for possessing a knife at the time and was also breaching bail conditions by being in the area he attacked the man in. The 20-year-old repeatedly stabbed the victim, who was on his way to pick up his children, in broad daylight near to Manor House Tube Station. The victim was hospitalized for 2 weeks after suffering stab wounds to his chest, jaw and neck and a collapsed lung. Solomon Angwa, of Holly Park, was found guilty of attempted murder by a jury and jailed for 15 years. 7. Mizuki Brown, 25, of Margery Street in Clerkenwell, Islington and Tottenham. 20-year-old Tyrese Annan were convicted of manslaughter. Haser men were responsible for killing a student, which sparked the tit-for-tat shooting of a gentle giant with no gang affiliations. Jamal Ibrahim, 23, was fatally stabbed in the leg by Annan and Brown in Russell Road, near Seven Sisters Tube Station, on May 13, 2020. A reprisal attack in Haringey 5 days later mistakenly targeted Chad Gordon, a shy and quiet 27-year-old with autism, who lived next door to the intended targets, friends of Mr. Ibrahim's killers. Brown, 25, of Margery Street in Clerkenwell, Islington and Tottenham. 20-year-old Annan were found guilty of Mr. Ibrahim's manslaughter following an Old Bailey trial and were jailed for 11 and 12 years respectively. Gaffer, 25, of Marquis Road in Camden, admitted the charge, having driven the killers to and from the scene, and was sentenced to 8 years and 3 months. 8. Left to right top row, Estevan Alexis Pino Munisaga, Claude Isaac. Left to right bottom row, Anis Hemesi, Clifford Rolex. A Swedish hitman who murdered a reality television star's brother in a tit-for-tat gang war was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 35 years. Flema Bakiri, 36, was shot dead on the doorstep of his £1.7 million home in Battersea, southwest London, in front of his screaming wife as she shielded their 2-year-old son on Christmas Eve in 2019. Mr. Bakiri, the brother of the Real Housewives of Cheshire star Missa Bakiri, was a kingpin in an international drugs gang and was targeted as part of a feud with a rival organised crime group. Anis Hemesi, 24, a professional kickboxer, was hired as an assassin to fly into London to carry out the murder, which was meticulously planned for up to 6 months. He rode a distinctive lady's bike, wore a latex mask and disguised himself as a litter picker to carry out reconnaissance before shooting Mr. Bakiri 8 times from behind. Hemesi was jailed for life with a minimum term of 35 years at Southwark Crown Court after he was found guilty of murder and possession of a firearm. Accomplice Estevan Pino Munisaga, 35, travelled to the capital for around 14 hours in November 2019 to rent the flat where Hemesi stayed in Oyster Wharf, visit Mr. Bakiri's house nearby and buy the lady's bicycle. He was jailed for 15 years, of which he will serve 2/3, after being acquitted of murder but found guilty of manslaughter. Clifford Rolex, 31, from Islington, North London, and Dutch national Claude Isaac Caster, 31, from St. Martin in the Caribbean, were each jailed for 3 years after being found guilty of perverting the course of justice, having been hired locally to clean up and remove evidence, including the gun, from the flat. Please like, comment and subscribe for further court updates.